Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives one more time. Today is a very special day for me. Today would be my father's 75th birthday. And rather than mourn today, I chose instead to celebrate by interviewing another hero of mine, economist and father of modern monetary theory and author of books such as Seven Deadly Innocent Frauds and Soft Currency. Please welcome my guest, Warren Mosler. Welcome, Warren. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Good to be here. Okay. Screens are all back up and everything's good.
You got it, man.
Okay.
You got it. So let's talk about your book, Seven Deadly Innocent Frauds. It is, to me, that is the preeminent book that we, all of us MMT evangelists, hand out to people as we're getting to know them, almost like a tract in a Bible. We run around and hand that out because it is the most easy to understand thing I've ever read in my life on such a heavy duty topic. Can you talk to me a little bit about the genesis of Seven Deadly Innocent Frauds?
Yes. Well, in the beginning, I was running for Senate in Connecticut, and I was running with the Independent Party there. And I was told, and it was understood, like, you need to have a book, and so that you have something that people can read to understand what you're talking about, where you're coming from. So I started writing the book, and I finished it in maybe April 2010, something like that, when the camp. It's the one and only book I've written. The idea was for a voter to understand what I was talking about.
So this was basically a tool for educating people about what I'm now terming macroeconomic reality, or MMT.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right. I like that.
That was before the name MMT.
So what were you calling it back then? Just, hey man, it just is. This is how things are. What were you calling it back then?
Well, it was Mosler economics.
Mosler economics. Yeah. I love it. So how did you
Yeah.
feel about it breaking away from Mosler economics to people calling it MMT?
Well, it started on Bill Mitchell's blog. It was one of his bloggers that started calling it that, and Bill gave me a call, and we talked about what it said. I said, look, whatever it takes, if he says this name's starting to stick, I said, fine, we've been trying to get some kind of meme or something to stick for a long time. If it's working, let's just go with it. What matters is getting the word out. So we just let it happen, and it took off. It took a life on of its own.
So let's jump right into this. So the first deadly innocent fraud that you have laid out is the government must raise funds through taxation or borrowing in order to spend. In other words, government spending is limited by its ability to tax or borrow. You're calling that a fraud. You're calling that an innocent fraud. I'd call it a fraud, but go ahead. Explain that one to them.
Yeah, and it's true. Any congressman you talk to says, look, we have to tax to get the money to spend, and what we can't tax, we have to borrow from the likes of China and leave the bill to our grandchildren. And President Obama was saying the same thing, and so was everybody else. And it's just not how the monetary system works. It's completely backwards, right? And that's what I go on to explain. And so the first thing I mentioned, get people thinking the right way, is if you go to pay your taxes with some old $20 bills, and you go into the IRS if you could, or the Fed, and you lay out these old $20 bills and you pay your taxes, they'll take the money, they'll give you a receipt, thank you very much for helping to pay for Afghanistan or Social Security or some silly thing. And then as soon as you leave the room, that money goes to someone else who then tosses it into a shredder. Well, if they're taking your money and shredding it, why are they doing this? Nobody else would do that. The state or local government would do it. Your bank would do that. You wouldn't, your local merchant who buys the stores are going to take your money and throw it away. There's something else going on here. They obviously don't need your money to spend, or they wouldn't be taking it and throwing it away. Now, if you go to buy a government bond, it's the same thing. If you were to buy $1 million worth of government bonds and you gave them $1 million in old $20 bills, they'd take your money, give you the bond, agree to pay you interest on the money, and then they take those bills and throw them in the shredder. So what's going on here? Why are they borrowing your money, paying interest, and throwing it in the shredder? This is not theory. This is what's actually happened. And you can go online and look up shredded money, and you can buy it in Washington. They sell the shredded money. So that was what I thought would make some kind of an impact with the idea, give people the idea that this idea that the government needs to get your money to spend it is not, there's something wrong here. It's not right. There's something backwards about that. There's something missing.
So to our listeners and viewers and people that are trying to learn the essence of modern monetary theory, etc.
Yeah.
Taxes don't fund spending is what we just got out of that. At the bottom line, federal taxes do not fund spending.
Well, it depends on how you define the word fund. So I don't actually say it that way.
Okay.
Okay, and because, and you don't need to say it that way and use an ambiguous word like fund, because to fund something means different things to different people. Now, what we're saying is the government's not taxing to get the money. So why is it taxing? So if we look at, for example, the football stadium again, you get a $1,000 ticket to the Super Bowl. You can sell it to somebody else for $1,000. Somebody might buy it for $5,000. And then they go to game and they give it to the guy there at the stadium. He lets him in. And what does the guy do with it? He tears it up and throws it away. Okay, why would he tear up a $5,000 ticket and throw it away? Well, everybody knows why he does that. It comes from the stadium. It gets sold. It gets used. It's done. It's over. It's expended. It's thrown away. And so what's happening? So the fundamental misunderstanding is that everybody thinks the government has to get the money from the economy to be able to spend, either through taxing or borrowing. When in fact, the truth is exactly the opposite. All the dollars that can be used to pay taxes come from the federal government. Okay, I mean, unless they're counterfeit or something like that, but in the normal course of events, all the legal dollars that can be used to pay taxes, including the ones you get from a bank, and I'll explain that later. But all the dollars used to pay taxes come from the government. They have to come from the government. So what's going on is that we need the government's money to pay the tax. It's a very different thing. We need their spending to be able to pay the tax, and if they spend more than they tax, those extra dollars are the ones we use to buy bonds. So it's completely the opposite. Instead of the government needing our money to spend, we need their money to pay the tax. And so you want to get people oriented in that direction. And I tell the story of Pompeii now, because that actually happened. I was in Pompeii last about a year ago. And the guide showed us the coins that they found from 2,000 years ago before the were found in the ashes after the volcano killed everybody. And he said it was a very nice place to live because the government would collect these coins for tax payment, and then they would spend them on public services like sanitation and public safety, and it was a nice place to live even though they were tax popular and people wanted to live there. And so I'm a bit of a troublemaker, and I said, well, the way it actually worked is the government would spend the coins first, and then they would collect them for tax. And he goes, oh, no. The government collects taxes, and then they pay the people. So I said, well, where did the coins come from? He says, well, the government made them. So I said, okay, well, then how do the people get the coins to pay the tax? He goes, so the government spent first and then collected the tax? I go, well, yeah, how else can it work? He goes, no. He walks away. His head was exploding. He couldn't understand it. But everybody in Pompeii knew that the government would impose a tax, and then people would go to work to earn the money, the economy would earn the coins that we then needed to pay the tax. It's a very simple system. And it's been known for thousands of years. And people used to understand this. And it's gotten lost. And it's not only gotten lost, it's gotten reversed. And back 4,000 years ago, when the people had to pay taxes in grains, the priests could go out and spend these tokens they made up that would represent so many bushels of corn or so much grain. And people would exchange goods and services. They'd work for the temple. They get paid in these coins, and they could use those to pay their grain tax. Well, it's the same thing. So the first thing that happens is the government imposes a tax, which creates a need for the money, the coin, the dollar. Okay, it doesn't collect the dollars. So the first thing it's tax liability. They levy a tax. That creates people looking for paid work. Now the government can hire those people with its otherwise worthless currency, okay, to come do the work that the government wants, which gets us back to why are they doing this? Why is the government doing this? They're trying to provision themselves. They want people in the army. They want judges. They want public health. They want public education. They want people to serve in all these departments. They want people to build buildings for them. How do they do this? Okay, first, they'd like to do it just spending these new dollars they just made up, this idea of dollars. Okay, so how do you get people to work for the dollars? Well, you levy a tax, and the dollar becomes a tax credit, the thing that can be used to pay the tax. Once you've levied a tax, once the economy owes you taxes, now people are what is called unemployed. They are looking for paid work. And so what I like to say, I'm circling back here, is that in the first instance, the purpose of tax is to create unemployment, to create people looking for paid work, looking to be paid in the currency that's required to pay the tax. Okay? So there is no unemployment before there is taxation in that currency. There is no one looking for paid work when there's no money. You go to non-monetary societies like an Indian tribe or military base. There's nobody wandering around looking for paid work because there's no currency, there's no money. Okay. Once you levy a tax, and so you couldn't get people to work for money when there is no need for it. So once you levy a tax, you create a need for the money, and then people will go to work to pay the tax. So do taxes fund spending, to get back to your question? Well, not in the sense that the government has to get the coins to pay the tax. Pompey did tax to get the coins. They taxed to get the people to want the coins so they could then spend them. So in that indirect sense, the taxation is funding spending in the broadest sense of the word. And so that's why I don't like to use the word funding. It's
creating the need, creating the drive.
Yeah, it's tax. We used to say taxes drive money, and we had a taxi driver in Italy taking us to the different presentations, and I used to say it's all about you, taxi driver's money. So that was my little pun for the cab drivers, but they're the most important people in the world because it's taxes. The tax liability drives the need for money. The government then spends and then collects the tax. It then spends, and if it spends more than it taxes, like it did in Pompeii, they ran deficits. Well, how do we know that? Well, there was money in people's pockets. There was money in the cash registers and the merchants, whatever they had. Well, how did it get there? Well, the government must have spent it and not yet collected it. That's called spending more than you collect. That's called deficit spending. So in the money supply, all those coins are exactly equal to the government's deficit spending to the last coin. If there were 1,000 coins in circulation, that means the government must have spent 1,000 more than it collected. Like, how else can they get there?
So it sounds like what we're doing here is we're talking about innocent fraud number 2, which is with government deficits, we are leaving our debt burden to our children.
Right. Yeah. So we get through fraud number 1. We realize that the whole thing is backwards, which is the most important thing. All these people coming on saying, if we don't make a deal with China and they don't fund our debt, we won't be able to fund healthcare. It's complete nonsense. Okay, the taxation creates people looking for work in the healthcare industry. The government pays them. Some of the money goes to buy things that come from China. It goes into China's bank account.
You're frozen, Warren. Uh-oh. So while we wait for Warren to come unfrozen, what we're talking about for the people that are just joining us is Warren Mosler's book, 7 Deadly Innocent Frauds. We're currently on the second fraud. I have a feeling that we're going to need to restart this program. BeLive has a great many wonderful things to it. One of them is not being reliable, unfortunately, but beggars can't be choosers. So we'll be back here in a moment. I'm going to stop this broadcast. We're going to start back up on the second deadly innocent fraud. More to follow here momentarily, folks. Thank you very much.